change. And that's one attribute that we hold really important. Doesn't matter what level you come into Google. You come in as a fresh grad all the way up to, a vice president, and leadership's just as important at those different places in your career for Google. And the third area, we call them Googlers, and we call the fourth area Googliness. Tell me, you guys are gonna be like, oh my gosh, googly, googly, googly. But what it means is a real healthy disrespect for the impossible. So the idea is that you come in, you're able to navigate ambiguity, especially in an office like there in the Philippines, where it's new, everything's starting. It's my favorite time. And basically what happens is you're coming in and you're being that catalyst for change. And so our job descriptions, like if you look online at the positions we have posted, are extremely vague. And we do that on purpose, because really what we're looking for are general athletes. And by athletes, we mean you come in and you could be in a whole group of different positions at Google. And that's why, when we're looking for someone to come in, if they're too niche, like if they've focused on one area forever and ever, it's okay if they're able to move into different groups and still be successful, because they have that, like I said, kind of general athlete quality. They're innately curious, they're humble, they're approachable, but they're smart. Means that they could go into different groups back and forth. So those are the four attributes we look for. And we do that, through some assessment that I can go into as well. But that's just generally what I'd say our recruiters are looking for, to kind of when they start those initial conversations, when they're looking at a resume, do we see indications of, maybe 2 or 3 of those different attributes that I just talked about.
What's your selection process?
Yes, so I think that's another one that has a big enigma around it. So we've been working really hard to streamline the process a lot better. We have a great team of in-house recruiters. So we have a recruiting team that's in-house. What we try to do is limit those interviews to 4 interviews with the business. So you'll have an initial conversation with the recruiter, and then you'll have no more than 4 business interviews. And that's changed, relatively recently, and that's, I guess it's been in the past 3 or 4 years, but that feels recent. And the reason we changed it was based on data. What we were able to do was compile data and show, based on what we'd seen, that going past 4 interviews doesn't really prove anything else, doesn't really add any beneficial data to making the hiring decision. So there's 4 total business interviews. And in those interviews, what we try to do, 4 attributes, 4 interviewers, is align each interviewer to each attribute. And so they do a dive on each of those attributes to make sure that they're locked in. I think where we've heard feedback is when someone's doing the cognitive ability, we call it GCA, so general cognitive ability, is there was a time when people were asking brain teasers, and we don't allow that anymore. Really, the general cognitive ability should be connected to business, not how many ping pong balls could you fit in a 747. It should be, because I would not do well on that, but it's basically how do you connect it back to the work that you're going to be doing? That said, it's pretty broad in scope, because we wanted them to be able to go to different teams that they should, once they get into Google, we have a lot of internal mobility. So that's how it starts with these interviews. Once the interview feedback is compiled, and literally when we do interviews, we're writing notes either by hand or jotting them down, there's actually a committee of people that does not include the hiring manager, that looks at a packet of information for the candidate to decide objectively, is this the right person for the role? And when we look at whether the right person for the role, what we're looking at is that general athlete quality. So that's kind of the selection process, where it comes to this committee of people that look over the background of the person, look over the interview notes, look over the reference checks. And if they, some groups, like in, for example, the PR team, maybe they've written articles, and we'll read a couple of the articles they might have written. And this committee of people goes, you know what, that looks like a really solid person to fill this role. And the reason we do that too is because sometimes a hiring manager, though, they want to hire the right person for their team, sometimes they go, look, this role's been open for a couple months, we just need to hire someone. And actually, when you have a committee of people that slow things down and look at the right person, then we get the right people in, because we think actually our people are the most important part of the company. So when I say we slow things down, maybe by other company standards it takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't slow things down to painful levels. It's essentially the packet of information is reviewed on a weekly basis, so there's a weekly review of these packets, and you get an answer in in a day of whether this person's going to go through. So there's been cases where the committee may say, actually, I need a little bit more information, but honestly, our recruiters are so calibrated to this now that it's rare that we ask for more and further information. So it's rigorous, no doubt about it. But it's fair because you don't have one person making the ultimate decision. It's done by consensus, and we think that makes a really big difference in the hiring. Am I jabbering on too fast? I'm kind of a blah, blah, blah. It might be my New Yorker attitude where I just start jabbering away a little too quickly. Slow me down if I am as clear as mud.
Sorry, go ahead. Just to follow up on what we were discussing a while ago. What can we do? For example, you have an applicant. What can we do to prepare to go to Google?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. There's actually some information on the website now, which I wish I'd had when I was interviewing. But there's some general information there you can look at, and some YouTube videos and some ideas on how to look at the interviews. I think what I would say to prepare, first of all, is look at the open positions and really apply to what interests you. What sincerely, genuinely interests you. I kind of relate it to don't throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks on the wall. Really look at it and say, this is something that I would love to do. This motivates me. So really zero in on the position or two that you find right for your interest. Then what I would say is every single CV that comes in is reviewed. I swear to goodness, every single CV that comes in, someone is looking over to review the background. So it's not a black hole or a void that your CV goes into never to be seen again. There really are a team of people that are reviewing our CVs. Because we're fortunate that we have a lot of interest in Google. But we also hold that as a responsibility, and so someone's looking through all these CVs, and then it's passed along to a recruiter who follows up. In preparation for the interviews, I guess I'd say, those 4 attributes are true for anyone in any position. I would just be ready to talk about how you've exhibited leadership, how you've used data to help drive your decision making, because it doesn't matter what function you're in, you're still, a person who can be driven by data. And really just how you're excited to make a change. I mean, it's important for an office like the Philippines where it's still very much startup mode, but it's also still important for an office like the headquarters in Mountain View because this, navigating this ambiguity is going to be true in just about any group because we like this kind of organized chaos, I guess. We don't want a lot. We're trying really hard to remain a small feeling company as we grow bigger because we want that innovation to be there.
For the Philippines, why is the interest now? And what exactly about the Philippines interests Google? Aside
oh my gosh, yeah,
being in Asia.
I mean, you guys know, right? This is a fantastic market for us. You guys are eons ahead. You're early adopters. You're innovative. It's a perfect match for Google. It was just a matter of time of getting there. I mean, we have a long way to go. We have a lot of markets where we want to enter, and it was just literally getting in as quickly and as smartly as we possibly could. And so, like I said, it was only 6 years ago that we started Singapore, and already we made that the hub for Southeast Asia, and then we knew strategically we'd be opening offices as we went along, and the Philippines was always a top priority. You guys, the way you use mobile phones, your interest in technology, it made nothing but good sense to us. It's just, I mean, it was no question of if, it was just a question of when. And I probably don't have as much insight on the timing exactly, except that the conversations I sat through it was always one of the top priorities for us to get into the Philippines.
Google work culture is sort of like a legend among employees. They keep talking about, I want to be in a company like Google, where you can have fun, be creative. Your boss encourages you to think for yourself. A lot of companies would like to emulate that, especially those also undergoing ambiguity as they navigate this new investment grade economy of ours. What can you share to those businesses, especially tech startups, that want to follow your example in terms of hiring and keeping people and growing people?
Yeah. I mean, great question. It is fun, and we know that our employees, we do an employee survey every year, and culture and the people are the top 1 and 2. They just, maybe they switch back and forth, but it's not about, that's even the work that we do is super important, but it's the people you sit alongside and the culture that we think has been kind of the secret sauce. And the thing about the culture is it doesn't take money to have this culture. Like, as a matter of fact, this culture came from when it was 2 PhD students around a ping pong table. Like, that's where the culture started. And I think the key to this culture is transparency. And you can do that when your office is 4 people. Be transparent, because if you trust the people, and this is why the hiring process is rigorous, is if you trust the people at every facet of the organization, then you can do a better job when you're, really trying to change the world. So you need to be transparent. Internally, we do product launches way earlier and dog food it on our employees before we do it anywhere else. And dog food for us, if you ever heard the phrase, you eat your own dog food, it just means that we try out our own technologies on ourselves to see if they work. And we do that with very little leak, because we trust our employees, and our employees trust us back because there's a huge amount of transparency. So that's part of the culture, that you don't need money to do transparency. And then I think it's also it is fun. It's kind of, we're not as worried about, what you wear to work or where you sit in the office, or if you have a big mahogany desk with a secretary sitting out front. Anyone at Google can make an impact. And I really mean that. Like, these 20% projects that we do come from anyone. Google News came from a guy who just wanted to see his news better. Gmail came from someone in their 20% project. Like, all this stuff comes from everywhere. It wasn't a VP who sat in a big bubble ivory tower and sat there thinking and then proclaimed that we're going to have, Gmail. Or it was absolutely something that came from the bottom up. So that transparency, that back and forth, is our life's blood. It's that innate trust between both. And empowering employees, because they're smart. They should be able to change it. They shouldn't have the bureaucracy to navigate through it, to be innovative. So I think the part of the culture that's fun, hello, welcome. The part of the culture that's fun is that you're actually able to make an impact. And I think that makes it feel like you're spending your day in a worthwhile way. The pictures of my babies in the background, I like being at work.
Yeah.
And it's because I feel like if I'm going to be at work, it better be impactful, or I'd rather be home with my baby. So I think that makes it fun. But yeah, I think the transparency is something when anyone can replicate.
You mentioned something about keeping your people engaged and keeping them happy. Do you have like a program? So some people, HR people, usually have a program like training and development, or like employee benefits and stuff. Is it that organized on that traditional in Google?
Yeah. No, I don't know how to answer that, because I'm not on the other side of the wall in other people's companies. I think for us the engagement is key, but it's not like you put a focus group together and you say, how are we going to be engaged? It's like a buzzword. We're like, okay, everyone, get in a room so we can figure out engagement. Like, it's so integrated into everything we do. Mm. And so when you mention the training and development and the benefits, we spend this is where it takes a little bit of money, but this has been from day one when we had very little money. If we're going to have an employee, they're going to be taken care of. And it's not just, pay, it's also around your health benefits. Really want to make that as painless as possible for people. That should just be a no-brainer. Everyone's covered, all dependents are covered. But the learning and development's another really important part, and I think Google's really put a lot of focus on that, probably the last 5 or 6 years. In the first 4 years I was here, it was grow, hire as fast as you can, and kind of the HR piece, the engagement afterwards. Of course you're engaged, because it was a tiny little company and we're going to, make the world a better place. And we still do that. Like, the mission statement's a nice thing to be connected to. But we also need to keep our employees here and keep them engaged by gestures, not by, like a focus group that talks about engagement. So with learning and development, we've had a lot of focus on that lately. And the skills that we're teaching, again, are not niche. These are skills that can transcend, that can allow you to move throughout the company. And some of our best learning and development courses are Googler to Googler. We call it G to G. So it's kind of like, what is yeah, I know, I'm like, Googler, Googliness, yes. But the Googler to Googler thing, G to G, is if someone has a skill, you could like teach a yoga class, or maybe you're especially good at, using Excel, or maybe you're especially good at making a phenomenal cup of coffee, which for me, that's why I'm salivating over your Starbucks. That was one of my favorite G2G classes, was like a person who was very good at it, got up at the barista thing and then showed us all how to do it. I took so many notes. But anyway, so I think that's the kind of stuff. It's not even just, formal EDU classes, education classes. It's Googler to Googler stuff. And then it's more of the traditional stuff too. So project management, teaching people how to do project management, teaching people how to get up and speak in front of others. We have that too. That's just part of being a good employee, no matter which group you're with. And then of course, each division has more department-specific training that they would do. And that's really evolved lately. It's gotten a lot of momentum and is building and building. But it's surprising to think that not that many years ago, we were so focused on hiring that we all needed to kind of slow down and focus more on the development of the employees we have. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Irwin.technoodling.net. When you set up shop in Singapore, you of course noticed some traits particular to Singaporeans. How about with Filipinos? Are there in your mind some standout traits that maybe align us with your for requirements for applying?
Yeah. I mean, no doubt about it. First of all, like I said, some of our first employees in Singapore were from the Philippines and are still with us today. And absolutely, I mean, I think, again, innovation, there's just a zest of like going for it. And so I love that you just have an enthusiasm for life, and everything you attack, you do with such fervor. And I think that's great for Google, because if you're going to do it, do it. Like, we don't care what the path is. You could have been passionate about playing the oboe, great. But if you're passionate about it, like, make it a true passion. Maybe you like needlepoint, but if you do it, you're just in love with it. Like, we love that passion, and I think that's absolutely true. I mean, that's my impression of the Philippines, too. There's just a passion. And I also think you guys have an innovation, too. I'm amazed with the employees that we brought on at the beginning of Singapore, who came in and just had no problem creating something from almost nothing. And I think that's really good for Google. And so I think we're really enjoying building the operations in the Philippines and the interviews that we have. And we have people from the Philippines all around Google. There's an internal alias for those that are proud to be from the Philippines, and that alias has people from the entire world. And I think there's a lot of pride, and there should be, because it's so well aligned to what Google's about too, which is just innovation, zest for like a real passion, and again, this healthy disrespect for the impossible. That to me embodies it, and I think that just it's aligned so well. That said, I think those attributes. Obviously, you don't want to be too stereotypical. Especially because I'm American. There's some pretty bad stereotypes with my background, but I do think that each person's considered as an individual, and it doesn't matter what path they took to get to the door. I mean, as long as they're bringing their whole self in when they come, we want them to feel comfortable and proud of who they are once they get here. So, like with the Philippines, one of my fondest memories when we started Singapore is we'd have each country from Southeast Asia, the Googlers from those countries would have a TGIF, and they do it in their theme. And so it was like the best attended ones were those from the Philippines, because it was a party, and they would come and they would do a dance, and it was phenomenal. So I think, yeah, no doubt about it.
They say you have to work really, really hard throughout the week to be a great employee in Google. But in your opinion, what do the best employees do on their weekends?
Yeah, I'm HR, like I may not want to know. Yeah, you touched on something really that we're focusing on this year. Like this year, it's been really big, which is well-being. It kind of makes me sad when I hear about the connection to you have to work all hours of the day. The technologies integrates everything we do. We've made a real push this year to just show how to set your own boundaries. And like I'm a mom of two. I mean, I need to leave the office every day by 6 or else I can't put my babies to bed. And for me, I'm not a whole person unless I do that. Whereas some people might be, I need to go for a run twice a week. And if I don't have my run, then I'm not functional. So you were asking about the weekends, but I just wanted to make it clear that I think, we're really pushing with our employees this year to talk about well-being. And like work-life balance is a hard thing to talk about because we all have projects that are due. We end up working a bit later. But then how to take those times that are a bit slower and not feel an ounce of guilt to structure your day the way you want to structure your day. So the weekends, I don't know how people fill their weekends up. But we do have like Google Plus internally, and I've seen some pretty amazing pictures. And it's pretty mind-blowing how people spend their weekends. Because like I said, Googlers come from all different walks of life, and we like that people are well-rounded and come from different backgrounds and have different interests, and we celebrate all of them. So kind of the most fun thing you can do is talk about something that genuinely interests you. I mean, I spend my weekends trying to detach and, not look at my phone with my email and just really focus and be present with my family. And I think other people do that with a passion that they have around, we have a lot of people that run marathons and, do all that kind of stuff. But what I'm amazed by is that there's an enthusiasm for whatever they're throwing themselves into. And it is pretty humbling to see what people are actually able to do on their weekends. I don't know how they fit it all in. But I guess I wanted to make a plug too for well-being, because I think that's our next focus area for us as a company, is just to make sure that we have healthy, complete, whole employees that are able to detach. I think we're all starting to realize that you can wear yourself down a lot if you don't really get away from the phone or get away from the inbox, for sure.
So right now, how is Google fostering work-life balance since your focus for this year?
Yeah, we're doing it in a lot of different ways. I mean, in true Google form, it came out of our survey as being an area for us to focus on. So there's been like many focus groups that have come in and wanted to solve the problem. I mean, I think it's tough because it is an individual issue. And we hire really smart, motivated people. So in the end, it comes down to yourself being able to say, I'm just going to step away from the phone now and not look at my Android on the weekend. Or at least I won't be looking at my inbox. So we're doing a couple things. One is we have the benefit side of the house, which is talking about how to optimize your life, educating employees about really what are the health benefits to detachment. Like I said, everything we do is driven by data. So for Google employees, it's helpful to show data on why this is not just like, oh, rainbows and unicorns, we should all detach and spend time with our friends. No, it's more like there are business implications to you're like the law of diminishing returns. You will actually have a worse product if you're working around the clock. So showing Googlers data to say, got to chill out a little bit. And then we have focus groups. We have a lot of employee resource groups, ERGs, that do like-minded things. So there's a running club, there's a book club, there's a wine club. There's all these different groups that kind of, you can tell which one I like. But anyway, there's different groups that really are trying to detach and say, let's go at 5 o'clock, go on a run, let's all read a book and we'll have a weekly book club. But also not making employees feel guilty if they don't want to do that with work colleagues. That's fine too. And we have some really amazing new training classes that piggyback on that idea of data showing what happens to your body if you're wearing it down too much. We partnered with an external consultant on something called Managing Your Energy and just how to go into kind of this replenishment mode for yourself. And the art of unwinding. So like we've had actually professors come in and talk about what they've done with their research to show how meditation rebuilds like the fundamental blocks of who you are. And so we really invested in it. This is a big deal for us this year because I just think it was clear in our survey that we need to work on it. And back to the earlier point, we empower employees, we value employees, and part of that is making sure that they're happy, healthy, whole. So Probably a long-winded answer, but that's some of the stuff we're doing right now. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. We're always looking for good ideas and help. Yes.
You mentioned a while ago that part of the reason you're interested in the Philippines is because we're early adopters. Our mobile regarding mobile phones. Could you talk more about that? I'm asking this because it's rare for me to be able to ask someone from Google direct.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome to ask me. Like I said, I'm people operations, so. Oh, look, Gail's like, hello, I'm a real person. And she might be able to step in on a couple of these because I am people operations. So I can tell you my impression, but I know that, the early adoption of some of the products that we launch externally, the Philippines jumps right on. And the number of people on phones, on smartphones, is high in the Philippines, right? I mean, you guys have just jumped ahead of other groups that are still working on infrastructure around, internet access. You guys are past that. You're on mobile. Everyone's on mobile, way ahead. And so for us, it's just, you get it. You guys get it. So, it's a lot easier to go into a place where they just get it. And there is the infrastructure there for mobile networks, for example. And we just see a huge amount of opportunity because there's, businesses are still getting online. And so would love to partner to get more business online so that we'd be able to help them, Google Wallet will help pay, all this kind of stuff, because we just see that the opportunity's there, the hunger's there. People want to do it, and you guys aren't afraid to try it. And so that's kind of my general impression. But do you guys want to add anything from the comm side of the house?
I can definitely go one-on-one with you later.
Okay.
And all the details, all the press release you have to show and all that.
All the nerdy stuff.
She's got the data. I've got more the this is my impression. Yeah. Any other questions?
If there's one thing that a Filipina should do on her weekend to beef up her resume for Google, what should it be?
Oh my lord. I'm probably not doing it. I'm like, yikes. I think just having a passion, you can have a passion about a lot of different things. That's totally fine. It's just what you're passionate about, fall in love with it for genuine reasons and actually do a deep dive into it and come to the table with it, because we find that interesting. So if you were interviewing at Google and we asked you a question about, so you love to water ski, tell me more about that. I don't just dabble in water skiing. I actually, it's a commitment. I'm actually driving it. It's something I find enjoyable. I want to test the limits. I want to, that's a deeper dive. So I think it's all right to have any type of interest as long as you're passionate about it and you are, committed to it and developing it. If you're asking for a Filipina specifically, again, I would say for me personally, Sarah, push the boundaries. Right? Push it. If your authority is this, push past that and really exhibit leadership. Exhibit leadership in your community. Rise up and actually contribute something to the greater good. Is it charity work? I don't know. But I think, do you have a weekly mothers group? I'm just making things up. And your mothers are getting online. Everybody's using, online docs or online building websites to help one another out, online communities. I just think there's a huge amount of things that we could be doing that some of us can get complacent. And so I would hope that if there's a passion, great. And we love talking to people who are giving back to their communities, because to us, it's very googly.
Do you ever check the demographic? Is there a trend among the people that you have, that you can give something like they're mostly female or only 2% married or something like that?
Oh, you mean for the employees that we have?
Yeah, globally.
Of the employees we bring on?
Yes.
We have a massive team of analytics team. So in people operations, there's 3 groups that are brought in. There's more traditional HR people, which is more like me. There's kind of mathematicians, statisticians, literally people that love math and data, and that's what we call the Pi Lab. So there's actually a lab that we're doing. And then there's also the third area, which is more the consultants, so people that have come out of your more consulting firms. because they can come at something and just a whole new frame of reference and turn it around on its head and try something completely different. That's what we like about that background. So that triad of people and people operations really balance each other out. So as an HR generalist, am I going in and looking up our demographics? No, I'm not going in and saying, ooh, about 8% of us, have 3 children and, that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily do that. We do have an analytics team that looks for trends and looks for ways to create best practices, but that's not aligned necessarily with demographic data. We're just looking at things that we're curious to see what makes a Googler tick. But all that data is, anonymous, and it's more of an interest in kind of human nature and seeing what makes people successful. So there is probably housed some demographic data. I think most companies would have something like that. But we have a massive analytics team that's just looking to see how to make us better. And it would not be anything connected to names or anything connected to performance or anything like that. It's just more anonymized data, possibly. But as an HR generalist, like someone in my role would not necessarily be privy to that. It's not really something that I need in my day-to-day.
Like we don't for already where they develop a program, let's say, to keep people engaged or to keep them happy at the workplace. It's not based on all these, all the data from the Google.
Not from the Google. No, not necessarily. No, I think what we're trying to do is provide an interesting enough work. With a mission statement as immodest as ours, it's pretty massive, right? So it allows for a lot of innovation. So when we keep people engaged, we really want them to feel like they're contributing to a better world. And so even someone in my role who's just kind of a facet of something feels like they're contributing to the greater mission statement. So that's where the engagement comes from, we think, is working on big problems that actually have an impact. And less about like, okay, so you have this demographic, and so to keep you engaged, I try this. It's more like the work should speak for itself. And we would never limit anyone from internal mobility looking for different opportunities internally. Does that answer your question, though?
Thank you.
Another. The office environment in Google is well talked about. Can you explain to us how it affects the performance of your employees?
Yeah, it does. This is another example where it's not just because it's fun. There's actually a method to the madness. There's actually a real business implication to having the offices the way we have it set up. So it sparks innovation. Like free food, it's funny, my dad was like, free food, that's the craziest business model I've ever heard. And I'm like, well, there's method to that, right? So it's when you sit in a cafe culture and you're sitting around having lunch and it's free and it's there and you're not having to worry about where you're going to go pick up your sandwich. You're just sitting there with a delicious, healthy lunch, talking with your colleagues. These are where the real ideas come out. The defenses are down and your brain is free to start thinking about some crazy stuff, right? We talked a lot about moonshots lately at Google. And moonshots just means it's an example of that healthy disrespect for the impossible. Like, I didn't know in my lifetime I'd see a self-driving car. That's crazy. But that means that there was someone sitting there in that cafe just like, I've got an idea. What about a car that drives itself? And then he's sitting amongst 5 other engineers who's like, no way, I just was thinking about that, and blah, blah, blah. So that happens in the cafes. But even just the way we have the offices set up, so you'll notice, Philippines is still growing, so it will be in an office that's kind of getting over 100 people, but you'll see there's these kind of happy collections of couches or bean bags. People talk about the bean bag and the lava lamp. That's not what we're really about. That's innovation, right? You just sit there, you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and you start talking. And that builds up these happy kind of accidents where someone walks over from one section and bumps into another person from another section. They sit down and start to talk. There's real business reasons for having the setup that we have. Open plan, right? Instead of having everyone siphoned off in offices, we want that interaction with different groups and different colleagues and different project teams. Project teams tend to be small family size, kind of 5, 6 people, 4 to 6 people. But the offices are set up so that people just randomly bump into each other and start talking. And we love that. And so all these fun offices, too, take down the walls of feeling like you're in the office and you have to think and you have to, clean out your inbox or whatever. It's more, things are fun, things are creative. You can talk to whoever you want to talk to. There's not really any hierarchy. You know, there's very few offices. There's huddle rooms where people can branch off to have like a private conversation, but execs are out with everyone. We don't want people back in offices hidden away. So that's kind of the setup. That's why we do it the way we do it. And I don't know, I just moved out of Singapore, but they have a hammock room. Power nap. 15-minute power nap. Gail's nodding. She's like, yeah. Amazing. Karaoke room. I mean, little foosball tables. Foosball. What do you do, foosball? You go and you talk, and suddenly you're talking about something else, and then it's just some of the greatest ideas, I would argue, have come over a foosball table. But yeah, little power naps on the hammocks, you know, just places for the meditation we were talking about, you know, this idea of taking 10 minutes and just quieting your brain. All that's really useful. We have, you know, massage rooms. That's another one. Detachment, relaxation, rebuilding. All that's good business sense. It's not just, you know, crazy Google ideas. Now, admittedly, massage therapists, that costs a little bit more money than the transparency I was talking about before. But amazing to think that the company's investing in the employee and their well-being.
So just curious, how do you balance the corporate aspect and the creativity?
Well, I mean, in the end, we're a business, right? We can't just be sitting around not doing anything. But I think what we do is the creativity becomes part of the business. You know, so when you're working on your OKRs, your objective key results, you sit down with your manager and you talk about what I want to deliver in the next quarter. There should be this kind of crazy idea thrown in there, a really innovative idea, something out there that you just want to go for. And I think, I think what comes into Google is you should be less afraid to make mistakes. And this could be true to the earlier question. It could be any employee, any company. 4 or 5 people, don't be as afraid to make a mistake. Like, you really should feel like if you do it once, it's okay, you learn from it. And that's part of creativity too. Just give it a go. Didn't work. No one's going to punish you for it. And I think that comes into the creativity too, and these stretch goals you set for yourself where you remove this kind of stigma of failing if you don't get it done. So I think that helps with the creativity as well.
Can you get a screenshot of the hangout?
I already did that.
How can I try to get one, please?
What was that?
Screenshot.
Yeah, we have that.
Odd.
So how about keeping the culture and all the diversity we have? How do we do that?
The diversity of our culture? Well, I mean, that's part of it, right? Is that what you're saying? Diversity in our culture?
Yeah, it's like we have so much diversity. How do we keep the Google culture the same across all offices?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, we really respect that we have an office in a local market, right? So we don't come in and push our culture down the throat of whatever market we've entered. I mean, as a matter of fact, our culture in the U.S. is weird. It's quirky. It's not like distinctly American either. So we think that through the hiring process, we look and assess people's interest in being part of something big and thinking big and trying big and failing big if they have to fail big. So the people that we hire are not distinctly like American or English or whatever. They're googly. But by googly, we say that's not connected to any country. And so as long as we're keeping tabs on that, the transparency stays open, and we're kind of showing the value in the culture, you don't need anyone policing it. It's peer-to-peer pressure, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're able to early try out these different products earlier. And if we start to lose that transparency, it's through people not respecting that confidentiality. So it's like this peer-to-peer pressure to keep the Google aspects of what we love being the culture in place. And so I think we self-govern that. I don't know what you think, but I think it's like a self-governance, and it's not a top-down enforcement. Like, I'm not the policewoman of culture, and I come in and I'm like, that was not the right thing to say. I mean, we don't do that. So I think it's nice because people are kind of bought into the quirky, weird culture and see the value in it. And like I said, in our surveys, it seems to be what people value most. And so to me, that just reaffirms that it's not anything that anyone's being forced to follow. It's actually something that they really like.
All right, any last questions for Emily?
I'm still waiting for my frozen latte. It's frozen cappuccino.
We'll send it to Melbourne, don't worry.
Okay, great. I'm sure it'll be good once it gets here.
As you are about.
I'm just curious about one thing. Since your work environment and your culture is talked about and emulated, in fact, it's like part of a movie that's coming.
Oh, that new one coming out! I can't wait.
How much of that is rated and how much? Which is that?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've gotten the feedback. Like, well, they've had it. You've heard about they do weekly TGIFs where Larry Page, our CEO, gets up and talks, and he was just talking. We had a Bring Your Parents to Work Day in the California office, and he was getting up in front of the parents, and he was saying we just saw the movie, and it actually pretty good. And what we liked most is like the hero, the kind of cool guy, is an engineer, and we're like, wow, this is great. Like the cool guy in the movie is an engineer, and I think I haven't seen it, so I don't know how similar it is. I can't wait to see it. But some of the clips that I saw, I was definitely laughing pretty hard. Like the green red paddle thing. I don't know if you've seen the ad where someone gets up and says something, and if you find it inappropriate, you put a red side up. If you find it appropriate, you keep a green side up. I guess that's something we did with our interns in university outreach. Like when we brought in campus interns, we kind of would say with this, it was like a training that we did. And so that was something that they used in the movie too. But I think what we liked most, the technology is kind of cool, and that it's not, it's not geeky. It's like jump on board because this is where everything's headed. And so that's what I think we're super excited about. But I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment on how accurate it is. I can't wait to see it.
My question is, have you been asked to, say, in a fashion sense, bottle the formula or to patent the formula of how it is to work inside Google?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not as crazy secretive as people make it out to be. It's all the things I was talking about. It's kind of this transparency, this openness, this empowerment. But I mean, I can see how people want to have like a crash test course on it. But it's interesting because it's been there since day one. I mean, it's just been in the values of who we are. And you can see on the website the 10 things we find to be true haven't changed. And I know we get some flack for the do no evil stuff, but that's genuine. That is extremely sincere. I mean, there are moments where we sit back and go, is that the right thing to do? And so I think all that's integrated into parts of it, into how we spend our days. And this humility and this kind of, like, it's a lot of peer-to-peer interactions. There's not a lot of top-down approach, and I think that's the secret sauce. It's just, innovation comes from everywhere. And if you hire smart people, they'll just amaze you with what they do. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to bottle it. But I don't think it's as hard as people kind of make it out to be. It's transparency. It's a huge amount of trust in everyone in every role. And it's hiring really smart, motivated people that are, kind to each other. It's kind of it. Sounds easy, but you're right. It can be hard. But I think the hiring process is really rigorous for that, just to make sure that we're not etching away at that core of what we find to be right. Like, really, we could be interviewing someone who has had a phenomenal background, but if we get a sense of, like, entitlement or arrogance or, like, it's just not, they're not going to do as well. And it really is like it's not the right place. Like, it just isn't. And so I think, that's part of our interview process, too. Like I said, the 4 attributes, someone's interviewing around that Googliness factor, which is, humility, healthy disrespect for the impossible, navigating ambiguity. If they're coming in and saying, where's my administrative assistant who will pick up my dry cleaning? Yeah, I don't care how much you sell, that's probably not going to, it's just not going to work here. So I think that's part of it. The hiring process leads back into keeping the culture going. And you have to be, and it happens where people are like, oh, I've had this role open for months. Let's just hire someone already. We'll figure it out. This person was good enough. But that eats away at the culture because you do that more and more, and then it's just that core of what you wanted. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, it's just started to etch away and take all that away, and then it's all about who's in the role.
So do your employees want to stay there forever because it's there?
Well, our attrition rates, our turnover rates are low, and we're humble about that. We don't take that for granted at all. I would never take that for granted. But people do leave. They do their own startups, or they go to grad school, or maybe family reasons, they want to stay home now. I mean, there's a lot of reasons people leave, but I think what we do is we have an alumni network, and we stay in touch, and we mean it. And these alumni networks are actually really active in different locations, and we've had people rejoin. Like, it's just a better time in their life. It's a different place. They're able to come back. So people do leave, but we hope they stay. We'd like them to stay, and we've been lucky that way. We've been really fortunate.
All right, I think that that is the end of it. Anything else? Joyce, do you want to say anything? Anything you want to touch on that Sarah wasn't able to touch on? Although I believe that Sarah was able to touch on everything.
Yeah, no, I just want to.
You don't shut up. You just keep babble.
Good.
No, I just want to thank you so much.
Question, and you have a lot of input on that one. Is there anything else, Joyce?
No, I think that was really great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time, and to our media in the Philippines, you guys had really good questions. So I hope Sarah was able to myth bust a little bit about what it's like to get a job here at Google and what it's like to work here. So thank you so much, Sarah.
I wish I could have been in the Philippines to do it. Ooh, too bad. Next time.
Next time, you said that.
Yeah, I'll travel to the Philippines anytime. Just gotta bring a couple kids. May not be as fun, but yeah, I would love. Thank you guys. Thanks for trekking in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one. See ya.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thanks.
Bye.